everyone. Welcome to episode 288 of This Is Whole Life. It is December somehow. I don't know how we got to that point so quickly, but we are here, and it's really good. I'm sitting here, and I'm looking to my left, and I see Jeff. I look across the table through the microphones. I see Ken, and it's always good to be in the same room together. There's always a small little component that's missing when you don't get to see the smile or the, did he really just ask that question from across the table? That kind of, you got to gauge because otherwise it's silence, and then I have to wait and go, are they going to answer? Or did I really make them mad this time that I asked this question? But since we're talking about Christmas and the Christmas story this week, I just wanted to do a real quick. Anyone have, are you a pro? Are you an okay? Or are you a meh about Christmas? Ken?
Oh, you're going to start with me?
Jeff?
If Ken doesn't want to answer,
okay, Ken is saving his as a, secret.
I'm a pro. I'm a pro. Yeah, you know, I grew up with a mom who was my dad was typical dads, but my mom kind of said, "Hey, you know what? This is a special time," and I think it still is for me.
Nice.
I think I lost the joy of Christmas when I worked retail.
That'll do it to you, won't it?
And it only takes so many times of somebody screaming at you since that you did not make their child's Christmas good because you personally did not provide the toy that they had to have to make Christmas good.
Well, I'm sorry, Ken.
Think of all those retailers this year with the shortages and the supply chain issues. It's probably going to be real, like Jingle All the Way.
Oh, have you worked in retail at Christmas?
No, I can't say that I have. My wife did recently.
It's a special kind of purgatory.
She worked at Kohl's seasonal. Yeah. And they were just, they promised everyone, you're going to get hired long term. Mm-hmm. And they actually did want her to work long term. But, once Mariah Carey starts singing All I Want for Christmas 88 times in a 2-hour shift, it really kind of takes the...
I worked at the Disney store, and they played, there was the same loop of Disney songs for, your entire shift. You could...
And then you know what they are, right?
And it's the happiest place on earth, so you better be smiling the whole time, too, which I loved working there. So, hey, Disney, I loved it. But I'm just telling you, great people to work with. I wish the people that came in were as nice as the people I worked with.
Yeah, nice.
The cast members that were there.
So, favorite gift or favorite Christmas memory, real quick?
Favorite gift or favorite Christmas memory? I think my favorite, one of my favorite Christmas memories, and which is going to seem really weird, was driving across the United States with my family.
On Christmas or near Christmas?
Christmas? It was around Christmas time. We drove from Tennessee to California to be with Rochelle's family in California, and then drove back.
Nice.
And it was really just some special memories with my kids, just seeing different sights along the way and coming back. And then probably growing up, one of my favorite Christmas was actually coming down here to Orlando with my family. We went to Disney. I think we were even there. I think we were there on Christmas Day on the 15th anniversary of the 15th anniversary year of Disney World being open. And then we went down to the Keys and did some snorkeling. So I think most of my favorite Christmas memories kind of center around the people I've been with.
Well, that's been a while then because, Disney's doing their big 50 this year.
Is that right?
Yep. It's 50 years.
So let's see. Does the math work out on that then? So maybe it was 25. Maybe that's what I meant.
I know the math because it opened on, I'm as old as Disney World.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, there you go.
71.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Jeff, favorite Christmas gift memory? Both?
Oh, my favorite. Probably by far favorite Christmas gift was a guitar. I had been wanting a guitar, but my parents are both gone now. My mom died about 2 years ago, and so I've never shared this story. But it's kind of a bittersweet story. It's just I was in the basement looking around, and I stumbled across my Christmas present that she had hidden in the basement.
Stumbled across.
Yeah.
Was that what we called it back then?
Yeah.
Right.
And I saw it. I saw what I was getting for Christmas. And my mom came up afterwards while we were eating. She said, "Did you not like the present? Because I thought this was something you really." Yeah. And I had so much guilt, but I've never told her.
It's hard to recreate that joy, isn't it?
Wow. So we're so happy to be with you when you finally confessed.
I know, right? We're here for you.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of my favorite Christmas memories is we used to go to my grandma Virginia's the Schneider side of the family, and the whole family, cousins, aunts, uncles, and we would all converge on a house that was too small for everyone, with a grandmother that was too irritable to have that many people for multiple days on end. But yet every year it was a highlight. Got to see my cousins that lived in Hinsdale near Chicago. And so, we used to play dirty sock tag with my cousins' rotten socks. Then they would, basically it was tackle whoever could and stuff the sock in your mouth. That's a really good, really good memory.
Those are some good Christmas memories right there.
Man.
It's like
and one of my favorite Christmas.
Whole new idea of having the stockings out at Christmas,
right? And I think my favorite one is I got the Evel Knievel on the motorcycle. He had like a metal rear tire because it made it, it would make him do wheelies, and it was flat so he could ride wheelies. And you put the little zipper thing in there and you'd pull it, and then he would take off and ride wheelies, go over jumps, all those things.
Sure.
And in my grandma's basement, and she had this long basement, so we pulled up the carpet that were just little spots on the floor, and it would go the whole length. And we played with Evel Knievel until it was time to go home. So that was probably my favorite. But anyway, I just thought it'd be a little bit fun as we go through Christmas to maybe share some memories. And we'd love to hear your favorite Christmas present or story. Send it in. All right. The verse we worked from this week was one that everybody who knows the Christmas story was in Luke 2, 8-11. And the shepherds in the field and, don't be afraid and all of these things. And you said the opposite of fear would be peace. But one level beyond peace is joy, because it encompasses peace and includes happiness in it. So the opposite of fear would be joy. And that seems like joy can be so, what's the word I'm looking for? Hard to find. It can be hard to...
It's elusive.
It can be, and like you feel, some days I feel good. Some days I feel happy. But I don't know how many days I feel joy.
Well, I like what Ken did say about it, though. He says it's a gift. I think that's actually quite clear. It is not something that we find ourselves in or a situational. I think it is a situation where we have to see it as it's something that we can't manufacture. I think it's something that is internal. Is a gift. I really do. I think I like that.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is happiness, Randy. I think when you say it's elusive or it can be hard to find, I think that's happiness. I think joy is, from a Christian standpoint. Now, if you're going to go ahead and take a secular viewpoint of joy and happiness, then it might be different. But from a Christian's viewpoint, based on what the Bible has to say about joy, what you're describing being elusive is happiness. And happiness is this kind of feeling inside of you that makes, that feels everything, your world is good. Joy is the peace and knowledge of Christ in the midst of chaos, that you're going to be okay.
But I feel that when I'm not happy at all, or when I'm feeling like my world is falling apart, that I know, and I have that, at least that base, knowing that no matter what happens, it's okay. But I wouldn't say at that point that I feel joy.
But maybe you are feeling joy and you just haven't known what to label it.
Oh, man. Come on, Ken. That's a tough one to swallow. But I think you're right, and I understand what you're saying. But I think that's the part where so many people maybe miss that part of it, because we're confusing. Joy doesn't mean that everything is right with the world or right with my world, right?
My wife would say that none of us should be able to talk about this, but she...
Uh-oh.
Then you might want to be careful.
Okay, yeah. We're not even 10 minutes in
giving birth, even though it's in the midst of pain, there's joy in knowing. And here I am talking about it. Sorry.
I have nothing to say about this, Tammy. Nothing.
I don't either.
This is just
Jeff did not prep us on this at all. He just backed up and opened up the gate. Well,
but you know what, though? I mean, you can think I can't speak to childbirth, Jeff.
I can't either.
But I can speak to having a kidney stone. I can speak to, which I can speak to saying that when I went in to have surgery to have it removed, I felt joy knowing that it was about to
even
come
though
out.
The pain was still
even
there.
though the pain was still there was joy knowing that. Well, I'll tell you what, there was relief too, knowing when I finally knew what it was, because I thought there was an alien eating out the inside of me. I thought I was gone. I really thought I was dying when I first and only time. Please keep it that way,
That's
dear
that-
Lord.
that's
Anyway,
that-
but the first and only time I have had a kidney stone, I thought it was death. And when I finally found out what it was, there was relief. And when I found out that there was surgery that would take it out, there was even more relief
Oof.
in spite of the pain. And I think that life is often incredibly painful. I think there's a lot of very, very painful things that happen. And for that reason, happiness can be very elusive. It can be very hard to find this sense of happiness, this feeling of happiness. But what the Bible is saying is that Jesus wants to give us joy, which may not feel the same as happiness, but it's a sense of peace and well-being, knowing that God is in control and that we can trust him. And that's pretty close to priceless.
That's absolutely priceless. And I don't know why that all three of us have mentioned that these painful, excruciatingly painful things that we go through is how we're going to put this together and how we're going to make sense of it. And I never would have done that before. But after just having COVID and going, yeah, I feel pretty rotten for a couple of days, but I didn't feel bad because I compared it to I had pneumonia for 9 weeks and it just like couldn't shake it. And the doctor was like, there's nothing wrong with you. He's like, everything is good. Your cholesterol, your heart rate, you don't have high blood pressure, any of these things. And he's like, you should be kicking this. And I don't understand why not. And when you're sitting up in bed, with 100 pillows and all you can hear is yourself drowning in your own fluid in your lungs, like you said, it's the worst I've ever felt. And I really did. I mean, I downplayed it at the time because I didn't want to worry my wife as much as she was already worried because I'm sure I looked like I felt. But you're right. I felt like there's no way. I'm for sure going to die. Well, life insurance policy's paid. I did go and check. And number 2, next thing I'm waking up to see Jesus. So, and that sounds kind of crazy, but at the same time, that where you find the joy, I think that helps. So maybe, if you're listening out there and you're thinking to yourself, I'm not so sure about this.
Here's the other thing I think that we need to be really clear about. Feeling joy doesn't mean that you walk around with this fake smile plastered all over your face that, that you see from people. You'll see people that are saying, I'm a Christian, so I have to be joyful all the time.
Yeah.
And again, they're mistaking the difference between joy and happiness. And so I think it actually is rather disingenuous in the midst of a painful situation to be walking around smiling. It's like going to a funeral and when everybody else is weeping, you're like laughing. It's inappropriate. And so, there's a time and a place for everything, right? But I think that when it comes to when we're going through painful situations, we don't have to plaster on some sort of fake smile and pretend like we're all good, but we can still say we have joy.
We can still say that, yeah.
And without having to fake it, this fake thing that people smell through and they know isn't real.
Well, and kind of speaking to that, someone may have heard you this past week say something to the effect of, the good news is for everyone. And you listed a long list of no matter who you are, where you are, what you're going through, maybe what your fear of to God of not being good enough or things you need to change or you're not good enough to go to church. So many people believe that in so many different stages of their life, and so many people have something that's happened to them in the past from a Christian or a church that makes them believe that that's true. And yet, Ken, you were pretty sure that that's not true. Why do you believe that that's not true? Because there's a lot of I'm looking at this from someone who used to believe that all those things, I would have said, you're so full of it. That's not true. But I know Ken, and I trust Ken. I believe Ken when he says it. So this is old Randy, like shouting from the back row because I know there's people that are friends of mine now that are going, I still don't believe that that's true because I've seen, at worst or at minimum, I've seen what Randy went through in certain situations. So I know how that works out, even if it hasn't happened to me.
So repeat again what's not true.
What about that we're all good enough somehow? Because many of us feel like, or many of us are in that position where we will openly admit that we don't feel good enough, or that someone, even just for ourselves, we don't feel good enough because we know who we are.
Can I feel good enough for the good news? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like because you said that the good news is for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's hard to believe that if you don't yourself feel it, And then if you add on to the top of that, what you feel there are hurdles in front of you, such as church or even maybe Old Testament God, I'm going to squash you with my thumb kind of viewpoint that we've gotten. Well, but why do you believe in your heart that that's true, that no matter what, that is true, that the good news is for everyone?
I'm going to defer over here to Jeff because I could tell he wanted to say something, and then I'll chime in. No, he actually did. He started to say something.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because of this. It actually brings up an interesting thing that happened in a class that I was in a couple of 2 weeks ago. They're speaking about the 144,000, which for those of you that are Adventists, that's a number that I'm sure you all understand quite well. There's this idea that 144,000, and there's an idea that permeates around a lot of Christian circles, that's the number of people who are actually saved,
going to be saved,
getting it, at least the ones that are alive. You think about that from a person who comes into church and then hears that truth, so to speak, as if that is, and so now the person saying it is talking about it being 144,000.
Yeah.
And then you say this gospel is for everyone. It's a pretty easy thing to think that, but not me, obviously.
Sure.
There is a fear. I mean, we try to create fear that this number, that God's love, God's good news, the aspect of salvation is limited.
And the rules, right? There's just so many rules. How could I be good enough?
Yeah. And so we get caught up on behaviors that these people are doing the right things. Obviously, I'm not. And so that's not going to be for me. And so for anybody that understands this piece is you basically say, okay, that's not for me. Obviously, I'm just not going to live that. And I think that's the big problem, is that we tend to be not only exclusive, but we tend to be sort of scarcity minded when it comes to God's grace and acceptance.
Yeah, very much so. I think that we really do operate out of this scarcity mentality that's very human. That we, as human beings, we almost thrive on scarcity. When we can say there's not very much and I have some of it, it makes me more important. It makes me wow, you've got a lot of money. Money's scarce. So you have a lot of it. Good for you. You've done something right.
Yeah.
And it's sad that as human beings, I think we still operate on that principle when it comes to the grace of God, that it's scarce. No, it's not. And I think that you asked me how I could say that.
Yeah.
And I just tell you that I didn't say that. In fact, in my sermon, I didn't say that. I was quoting.
Okay.
I was quoting Luke chapter 2, verse 10. The angel reassured them, "Don't be afraid," he said. "I bring you good news." That's the gospel, good news, because that's the same word in the Greek that's used for gospel. The gospel, it's the good news.
It's the good news, okay.
So I'm bringing you the gospel that will bring great joy to all people.
Right.
All people. So that's not Ken going and saying something. That's the Bible speaking. It's the good news is for all people, and it will give joy to all people. And so I think what people choose to do with that good news, just because the Bible says it brings good news to all people, doesn't mean that all people are going to choose to accept that good news. But it gives joy to all those who will and who want to. And I think that's the thing that we need to just really understand, that the good news is for everyone, and where they're at. There's this kind of sick, twisted notion that people somehow need to pull themselves out of their alcoholism, out of whatever, before the good news is for them.
For them, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The whole point of the good news is God is for you. You're welcome. Here it is. It's a like gift. That. It's there for you. It's not contingent on you receiving it until you do X, Y, and Z. It's here for you, and your job is to accept it and then allow it to transform you. And that's a fundamental difference between different Christianity schools of thought. There are those who feel that they need to transform themselves,
right, and
then the gospel is for them. And then there's those of us who believe the gospel is for you, and it will transform you.
Because you made it clear that even if you felt like it wasn't for you, that wasn't the case at WholeLife Church, that everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
And we're ready for you no matter where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say
that can be uncomfortable, can it? Because what that means is that if the gospel is for everyone, it means you're going to sit next to somebody in church that isn't living in a way that you think is right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And maybe, dare we say, in a way that God has said isn't right. You may sit by some people like that. I mean, if you sit next to me, I guarantee it.
I said, if you're sitting next to me, same thing.
Yeah, exactly. If you're sitting next to me, I guarantee you're sitting next to somebody like that. And the big problem is that there are those who are willing to admit their need for God's grace, and those who think that they're pretty great already, and that they like to go ahead and say, well, this sin is so bad, and and basically any visual sin is bad. Anything I can hide is okay.
Oh, yeah.
Or it's not as bad, right? Because and what we do is we kind of encourage this lifestyle of hiding our faults and never actually dealing with them, never actually grappling with them. And we also create a lifestyle where we think that because God has called me to this, that means He's automatically called you to that, God did not call everybody to be a podcaster. Sure. And God didn't call everybody. And so it's kind of interesting that we somehow then try to cram everybody into the same behavioral box, thinking that God transforms everybody in exactly the same order, the same way every time. And that's just not what we see biblically. Yeah. We see a lot of very, very flawed people. And that's what you just look through the Bible is just this one long list of really messed up people that the gospel is for.
Yep. And you're right, though. When you look at it that way and you see that list and you go, goodness gracious, even people like David and great people of the Bible, Moses had his issues with following God's directions, and Abraham, how many times he lied. When we've talked about these stories, and if you're a Christian or have any degree of being involved with Christianity, you kind of know these stories. But you look at yourself and you think, man, the world's a much worse place than it used to be. So like the sins now must be even worse than they were then, which I don't personally prescribe to, but because I'm just like, most of the sins you can think of, I've done them. I've probably done most of them very well and very often over the course of my life, unfortunately. But yet at the same time, it's trying to find a way for someone who feels that part of it, like I'm not good enough, but then to somehow have been damaged or hurt. And that's really where my feeling always comes across of who I want to tell the good news to. I know this part stinks, and I know that maybe where you are, there's not a church like WholeLife Church that's just going to welcome you and say, oh, I saw you stomp your cigarette out on the way in. But welcome anyway. And I hate it when people find roadblocks to Jesus that we put in place as Christians.
And Randy, if you don't mind, I want to back up just a little bit. Not welcome anyway. Welcome,
right?
And I'm not trying to play games with you, but it's really important to me that's said. Right. Because we make people feel that welcome anyway. But no. Welcome. You are welcome here, and God is working in your life just like He's working in my life if you've given Him control. Let's go ahead and use the disciples as an example. When did Jesus call them to come follow Him? Was it when they'd finally understood His mission, when they finally got it, when they were flawless, when they didn't make any more mistakes? No.
He'd still be waiting.
He called them. He included them. He gave them something to do. He gave these really messed up people some huge things to do. He sent them out as missionaries. This is Peter, who's going to deny Him. This is Judas, who's going to betray Him. He sends all these people out as missionaries. He uses them, and He calls them on multiple occasions faithless. And when is this generation going to get it? But that's the part that really sometimes frustrates me about membership in church. At what point do you belong? Well, if you're looking at Jesus, you belong when you're called and you accept the call. And there is no evidence that Jesus did a lot of preparation with those disciples before he called them. There's some who think there might have been, but there's no evidence in the Bible. There's just a call, and then they become a part of the story. And so I think that's incredibly important for people to understand. It's why we do things the way that we do them at WholeLife, because we believe that belonging comes before transformed character necessarily. And that because a transformed character is a lifelong process. And it's a big mistake to think that once you've been baptized or accepted into membership, you have arrived.
Thank you for the correction, because I wouldn't want that to be what somebody thought either, because I hope everyone noticed about 10 minutes ago, Ken said, God is for you, you're welcome, as in period, full stop, whatever your lingo is, that's the end. And I truly believe that as well, that if we're not able to welcome you as you are, as Jesus did, then we're doing it wrong. So
coming back to the whole idea of joy, though, in this regard, this hiding piece that we kind of passed over really quickly, the hiding is the part that is where the joy does get missed. Because if we're hiding and we're keeping things down on the down, behaviors are hard to hide sometimes, but there are some things that we do hide.
Sure.
And that's where joy sometimes, we say, hey, I don't have a life of joy. Find someone, and you don't have to shout it from the rooftops, but there may be somebody in the community that you trust. Find someone and start saying, this is a part that I really would like to get out, and I trust you. So if you want joy, that's the hiding piece.
Real quickly, I wanted to touch on something as we begin to wrap up. You said joy is found in Jesus, and you went back to that same verse in Luke 2, 8 through 11, where it said, don't be afraid. He said, I bring you the good news that will bring great joy to all people. In verse 11, the Savior, yes, the Messiah, the Lord. And you broke down those three things, and I thought that was super cool, that I'd never thought about him that way. But the Savior means he's the one that delivers us. We are saved, and we can look to that. And the Messiah, who was the anointed one, referencing when the Old Testament high priest used to be the anointed one on behalf of the people, petitioning for God. And Jesus obviously took that over when the veil was ripped, and he's become our high priest, and now he's for us, period, as to God as our representative. And then Lord, and I thought this was really good, the Master, a real peace. You said a real peace in knowing someone else, and my version, the greatest being of the universe is in charge and Lord of our lives if we let him. That's pretty cool to get out of that verse when so many times we're reading the story and we're thinking about, well, we know what comes next. So we're kind of reading ahead with a little bit of pause in there. And I thought that was really, really cool. If you've never thought about it that way, just stop and give that about 15 minutes to ruminate in your mind a little bit as you think about the Christmas story. And that was really, really impactful in the moment. And since this week, this was probably the thing that's just been sitting in my mind over and over again, which I've really enjoyed as we start rolling into Christmas. And then the one thing, and this is more of just a takeaway, you mentioned that the calling of Jesus may not always be what we want or what we think it should be. And I want you to, if you missed the message, please go back and watch it. Even if you did, go back and check that out, because there's been a couple of times, I immediately thought of 3 times in my life where I was like, God, this cannot be what you want me to be. And I don't know why I'm here. And then later, I don't know why I'm still here. Please, something, make a change, because I'm trying every outlet possible and it just isn't working. So don't miss that part. Ken really nailed that one. And I thought that part of the message with those couple of points just really drove home a lot of things for us to consider as we go to Christmas. And we had one Q&A that did not get asked, and it was from an anonymous. It said, what is it about God's presence or radiance, Ken, as you mentioned, that makes it so terrifying to us as we think about this story?
I think it's because God is so different from us.
Ooh, yeah.
And when I say different, I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it in the best kind of way.
Best way, okay.
But, we talked about the Love Is series.
Yeah.
If you think of a being that actually does all those things.
And does them with perfection.
And does them with perfection.
All at the same time.
And think about the radiance of the sun that just think about that. I just think we see it over and over in the Bible. Anytime a human being encounters God or an angel, their radiance, the perfection of who they are, the brilliance of them is terrifying. And I think in some ways because it's so the opposite of what we are. The Bible says that there is no darkness in God. There's a lot of darkness in me.
Our world, yeah.
And so
when I say in me,
yeah, that's what I said, and I meant it. There is. I
know.
I'm not trying to. I think that again, I think it's important for us to be real. Pastors have the things in their life they're going. I'm glad that you as a church did not know me when I began pastoring, and before that, I've had to grow a lot in my life, and the one thing I know is I have a lot further to go. But I have a temper. It really, in the beginning of my ministry, would come out in negative ways, and I had these tendencies to do this. And my point is, there's darkness in all of us, and it's stuff that God is working on. There's the stuff that I feel comfortable enough to share with you, and there's the stuff that I don't feel comfortable enough to share with you because it's painful to admit that you have these faults, but we all have them. And if we all have our eyes on Jesus, what we can be assured of is Jesus says, if I'm lifted up, I'll draw everyone to me. And what that means is he's going to draw us in his time and his way towards him, towards the character that he wants for each one of us. And then he will take care of it in his time, in his way. And it's not something that I have to spend a lot of time freaking out about. It's something that I work on. I go and ask God to show me what needs to be changed. I do the best that I can to work in concert with him on those changes. But I've had enough problems in my life that I've prayed over for years and years and wanted to get rid of, and God didn't choose to do it, that I've learned to just have to rely on him, that when it's time, if I've turned it over to him, he'll take it when he's ready.
Well, I resonate with that because a lot of people, if I meet up with someone on social media for the first time in maybe who knows how long, and the first thing is, wow, you're still alive? 2 is, you're a Christian? And then and third, if they know me from a church setting, you're an Adventist? Like all those 3 things are just so.
Those are incomprehensible, huh?
like the person that I was, there's no way that equates to the person I am now. And of course, just like you said, there's lots of things that I've given God that I'm still waiting on, and that, but working again as you can and learning to kind of find that rhythm that you don't just berate yourself every time things don't work as you should. And I've been praying about this. How come it's not gone? And, perpetuating that cycle of just but instead giving it to God. I think that's great. And that helps others to see, oh, maybe there's something to this. Because if Randy's still alive, he's still a Christian, and he's still an Adventist, then something had to happen because that does not compute. But one of our whole life reflections asked, do you believe God makes life better or more joyful? And if so, how do you share that good news with those around you? And to be honest, I think what we just talked about, just being transparent in how we live our lives and being honest with the things that we can, like Ken said, that we can share or we feel comfortable sharing, kind of keeping the rest to ourselves, but just working in concert with God, people notice. And I think that it's the easiest way to not also find judgment, because when we open our mouth, we say, well, you're welcome in spite of, or, just a total guffaw in my speak, which, again, I didn't believe that, but because I want everyone to just walk in the door however. But we say things sometimes that even if it's unintentional, it can get in the way. Sure. So letting just ourselves be the best that we can be and people noticing, I think that's maybe the best thing that we can do to help that out. So if you can think of something else, let us know by voicemail or text 407-965-1607 or email podcast@wholelife.church. And Denise asked me this week, she said, well, I was going to ask something, but I didn't want anyone to know it was from me. She's like, is that number truly, this was at the picnic, is that number truly anonymous? I said, it is. I said, the person that we read the text message from last week, I said, I have no idea who it is. I know what the number is, but I don't know who it is. And so, if you need to ask a
So
question.
when we get a weird question next week,
Denise, we
It'll
found
be
you out.
Denise's.
we didn't check it out, Denise. We're just doing the process of elimination. We have one question.
That's it. But for everyone, no. And that's the whole intention of that number, is so that if you need to ask a question, we would love to ask and have you ask and give us a chance to answer in the best way we can. So our final thoughts are from the closing of Kent's message. He said, our joy is found in the fact that a Savior has been born. Yes, the Anointed One, who is our leader, our master. He's been born in Bethlehem, the city of David. He's been born, he's lived, he sacrificed himself for us, and today he's in heaven with the Father, feeling love and giving love to us. So let's share that gospel, that good news with the world, that God doesn't have to be feared. He is for everyone as he reigns as our deliverer, high priest, and master. Period. All right. Next week, we stay with simply Christmas and simple gifts. Is this like a white elephant that we're doing here in the studio, or is this for everybody? What's going on?
No, you're the leader, so you're gifting Jeff and I. We can't wait to see what you've got for us. We're looking forward to it. We're going to put to test the theory that it is better to give than receive, and we're going to make sure that you have the better experience.
Oh,
that's what we want, because we care
great.
about you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I like I like this idea of simply. I mean, I think we broke down, today, and you broke down in your message, obviously, one verse that just tried to keep it as simple as possible. And it really did. And even though we talked through a few things today to kind of challenge that a little bit, I think I'm leaving today thinking and feeling like, I hope whoever's listening really does feel like God is for them, period.
Yep.
And at WholeLife, no matter where else you may have been at WholeLife, we do the best that we can to make sure you feel that way too. And there's been so many new people at the church over the last couple of months, and it's been wonderful to get to know them, to have people come up and say, Matthew, if you're listening, I only know your first name. I met you walking on the sidewalk, and then when Ken at the picnic said, hey, great job with the podcast. I don't know who Matthew is, but that was nice that someone's listening.
I want you to know Matthew is awesome, so you need to get to know Matthew.
Next time I see him, I'll hopefully we can connect for a longer period of time, because that was
sings up front every once in a while.
Does he?
Yeah, makes me happy.
Okay, well, Matthew, good job singing and
so.
Okay.
I feel like next week I'm going to give the gift. Have we revealed what our theme is for
No, last week you said we were waiting to check with the team.
Point. I think that next week
next week
reveal it.
Next week, Tuesday, we'll reveal it first here on the podcast. So if you want to know, and I'm telling you, if you are a whole lifer, you're going to want to listen to this, because you are going to get to deal with this theme for the entire year of 2022. You're going to hear this word and this idea so many times. So be the first one to know.
Be the first
right
one
here
to
on
know.
the podcast.
And share that episode so everybody else knows too.
There might be a chance even that we'll be able to have the official logo that you can put in your show notes.
I like it.
Because we're going to throw that logo on some different merchandise, and it's going to be fun.
Man. Now, see, Ken's trying to up my Christmas theme here, because by Christmas, I'm working on a couple of fun things for us. And I'm also this week, I promise, I just remembered, and I'm still looking for the picture I promised during Q&A. And I just realized that I don't think my mom has it. I think I have it, because she sent me last year, she brought all of my old picture books. So I'm pretty sure, check out Wednesday, maybe Thursday on Twitter. And if you don't follow the church on Twitter, which is where we put everything, it's at WholeLife ORL. And so make sure that you look us up on Twitter every morning when the podcast comes out. And usually on Friday nights, we put a few snippets out in case you've missed it to remind you to listen. And that's where you will find the picture from me and my Big Bird meatball hat. Because Ken was afraid and I was not. But he's not afraid now. Big Bird's his favorite. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week, guys. Thanks for listening, and just have a fantastic week. And we'll be back next week with simple gifts.